Welcome back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about Mackenzie Gore. And if you guys have been following the channel for a long time, you will know that we are all big Mackenzie Gore fans. We think that he's a guy, even when he was struggling, that people shouldn't have lost faith in. And now what we're seeing is we're seeing a dude just dominate in spring training. Today, he pitched 3 innings, 5 Ks. His slider looked absolutely disgusting. Didn't matter if it was against lefties or righties. He got a guy low and inside to strike out. He got a guy high and just like in the middle of the plate to just swing and miss. And then he also struck out another guy on a 3-2 count where he just threw his heat up in the zone. Guy swung and miss. So he looked really good today. I get it, spring training. I get it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you guys are overreacting. You know, this guy's still young. There's a lot to go through. But for Mackenzie Gore, the big thing is his stuff over the past couple of years. And I mean, you look at the situation he's been in. He's been injured. You didn't have a real offseason. You know, there was COVID. There's so many kind of factors that were just playing a role in his struggles. But now we're seeing him and we're seeing his stuff look good. We're seeing the fastball velocity up. We're seeing the movement on his pitches. So, Chase, you want to get into just, you know, how his mechanics look now? Just because I feel like you kind of describe that better than me and Isaac do. But just the differences that you're seeing from Mackenzie Gore and what it means for him moving forward.
Yeah, I know one of the things that they were more than adjusting last year with Harold is they were trying to fix his leg kick to not make it so high. And I don't know if Niebla has worked with him on it again, but his leg kicks doesn't look as high as it used to be. It's very fluid now. He seems to be landing in the same place over and over again. He's not overthrowing the ball or releasing it too early. He's around the zone. He's getting on top of all of his off speed. He just looks really solid. He's throwing his slider and his curveball where he wants it, and that was evident in today. That first strikeout on that down and in completely fooled the guy, went straight under the bat, swung over it. And then I guess the best example of this would have been against the Matt Thaiss. He threw 3 sliders and all in 3 different areas of the zone, and he struck him out on a high slider, which it could have been hung, or that's could have where he wanted it to be. Because we've seen Lamet kind of pitch up in the zone with the slider and kind of use it like a cutter in that instance. And it worked. He was locating most of the time. The only one pitch that I saw that wasn't really anywhere near the zone was if he was supposed to throw a fastball up in the zone and he kind of spiked it. That was the only really errant pitch that I saw. But other than that, his mechanics looks good. He's painting it. He's hitting the spots where he needs to be. He just overall looks great. And I think we do need to praise Ruben Niebla a little bit because I feel like our pitchers are going to take the next step that where they were supposed to be last year under Larry Rothschild, but unfortunately did not have. But yeah, I think all our pitchers are going to look great. Ruben Niebla definitely deserves some praise in this.
Yeah, Mackenzie Gore's had a good couple of innings this spring training. I think he's only allowed 1 hit, has 7 Ks. Remember the first game it was against that really good Mariners lineup. He only faced 6 of their hitters, but got 2 strikeouts, and I don't remember him allowing a hit. He didn't allow a hit. So, he looked really good there. Today looks even better with 5 strikeouts and 3 innings of work. Only allowed 1 double, and other than that, everything looked great. There was a lot of life on his fastball. I think what people forget is that, last year in spring training, you could say, oh, it's only spring training, but last year in spring training, he did not look anywhere near as good as he does right now. Because last year in spring training, he had control issues. His velocity was still up there, but it wasn't 98, 99. It was, I believe, 94, 95 on his fastball. So gain a couple miles per hour. His control's a lot better. And even though it's not perfect, it's something we all want to see, especially from a young pitcher like him, who was at one point our top prospect. Obviously got taken by CJ Abrams, but those are 2 guys right now that are flourishing right now in spring training, and that we really need to come up and be successful for this Padres team, because we whiffed in free agency on anyone we were trying to get. It wasn't exactly a good free agency period. Hasn't been any trades that have lit up, except for Luke Voigt. There hasn't been any trades that have lit up this roster that I think, oh, this will be a game-changing roster move. But, the best game-changing roster moves come from the young guys that are cheap and that are controllable for years to come, that are able to grow with the guys that you already have. I think that'll be a lot of fun to watch this team grow with each other. And, as long as Gore is looking like this, I see a lot of you guys saying that, he should be our 5th starter. I mean, you can absolutely make a case. If not the fifth starter, then you can piggyback him with and of course, I haven't been like the craziest guy about the piggyback, but you can piggyback him with somebody like Mike Clevenger or Blake Snell, Chris Paddock, whatever it is. But man, he looks fantastic, man. Life on his fastball, that back foot slider today, I forgot who it was. It might have been to the guy Chase was talking about, was filthy. He threw one in his first outing that was a back foot slider, looked filthy as well. So everything's looking good. Very, very exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing that's been exciting is that we're seeing his secondary pitches, slider, changeup, curveball, most of the slider, I would say, from what we've seen in spring training. But all those pitches are supposed to be plus pitches, and that's what it's looking like right now. He looks like he has a nasty fastball slider combo right now. And then you add on, he also throws 2 other pitches, not just a 2-pitch pitcher. So I think that's a plus. But the biggest thing for me has been the control. I mean, when you would watch some games and you just see, not only watching him, but you just go and you look at the box score and you're like, he walked this many guys in the first 2 innings. I remember we were talking about that last year where he was starting to get, it seemed like his stuff was starting to get better, but then he'd randomly have super like low drops in his fastball velocity. It would be like 95 one day, then the next day it'd be like 89, or the next start it'd be like 89. And be like, we were really confused about that. It was just all over the place. Mechanics were awful. I remember he had an outing where he walked like 4 guys in the first 2 innings last season, or it was the season before. And if you look back on 2021 spring training, he threw 11 innings. He walked 8 guys and struck out 10. This year, he has thrown 5 innings. He has walked 0 guys and he struck out 7. That's the big difference there. And you can see it from a pitch to pitch standpoint where it's just, okay, this guy looks like he's money right now. He looks like the hitters are not in control. He looks like he's completely in control. He looks confident, and he looks like he's just mowing through these guys. So I think that's one of the big spots there. Now, there's also like the other aspect of, in last year's spring training, and I don't want to dive too deep into these numbers, but it is kind of like day and night, so it's cool to see. He allowed 12 hits and 11 innings. This year he's allowed 1 hit. He allowed a couple home runs. But those were the same type of numbers that he was performing at last year in AAA, where he would just struggle. He would just have a really bad day and just get absolutely lit up. So it's good to see that he looks a lot more in control. And Isaac, you brought up, him potentially fighting for the fifth starter role. And I would say, I think it's too early to like make that, oh yeah, he's going to do that. We've talked about before. We all think he's a future ace. We all believe that. But it's been 2 starts. If he keeps looking like this in spring training, though, and this is the same conversation that we had yesterday about CJ Abrams, the Padres now have a good problem. They have a guy that is forcing his way onto the roster, and they don't have a spot for him. You have to make a spot. You have to figure out a way for it to work. A guy like Chris Paddock could get moved if this ends up happening. And we brought up maybe he gets moved to the bullpen. And we've talked about so many different scenarios with this rotation, but if Mackenzie Gore is that dude this year, and he's coming out and it's just like we can't do anything, but we have to have him start, then that's a good problem because the Padres are going to now have a lot more starting pitching depth. And last year, when most of the season they had 3 guys, all of a sudden right now it looks like they have 7 potential starters, which is crazy when you consider where they're at last year. So that's all I got on Mackenzie Gore, but anything else you guys want to add before we take off?
Yeah, I wouldn't jump the gun and say he's going to be the 5th starter or anything. I think he's definitely going to start off in the minor leaguers just because we kind of already have a surplus of MLB-ready arms. So unless one of them gets traded before the season starts, I don't think he makes the roster, which is unfortunate because, you want to reward, like Bob Melvin says, you want to reward players for doing well. He wants to reward CJ Abrams for going out and hitting what should have been 3 home runs. That foul ball yesterday was BS. But he wants to reward the players for overperforming. And so the only way to do that for Mackenzie Gore would be to give him a roster spot. But you have Darvish, you have Snell, you have Musgrove, you have Paddock, you have Martinez. And I don't think I'm forgetting another guy. But you already have guys, maybe 6 guys that are MLB caliber pitchers already. The only kind of outlier to that is, okay, we haven't seen Nick Martinez pitch. We don't know how he's going to translate to the MLB coming over from Japan. And if that doesn't work, then even then, that means Mackenzie Gore is still not going to make the roster at the beginning. Nick Martinez would then just move from, okay, we gave you a few chances, 3 or 4 starts. You aren't making any adjustments. Actually, it'll probably be more like 6 starts. You haven't made any adjustments. We're going to move you to being a long reliever because you know what? You're fine through 2 innings. You're going to be a long reliever. Mackenzie Gore, you're now coming up. And that's if, they took away the service time manipulation. I still haven't seen anything on that, whether or not that's in the CBA. So they literally just might wait and be like, okay, you know what? We're going to wait and get the extra year on Mackenzie Gore. So I don't think it's realistic for him to be called up right away as much as I want it to be. But I definitely do think he's going to end up forcing his way onto the roster this year, just not right now.
So with that CBA thing, I actually was informed by somebody in the comments. We don't say his name, but he said that if they get called up and they win Rookie of the Year, then that year counts for them, as even if they get called up like whatever and how many ever days, I forgot what it was, but if they're in if they win the Rookie of the Year, then it counts for them. They don't get manipulated, whatever it's called. But regarding that, I don't know, man. I think it's a lot of fun to see Mackenzie Gore right now. It's only 5 innings, of course, but everything looks good. Control's a lot better than what we used to see. And I think, from watching, especially Chris Paddock and Emilio Paganza, I forgot what they're called, where they talked to Tony Gwynn about it. But to me, I just thought it was a lot of a mental struggle for Mackenzie Gore. And of course, he hasn't talked about it, but, it was a really tough year for him in 2021. And it's a lot, it's really relieving to see him put himself in this position where he's succeeding, and of course, limited amount of innings, but he's succeeding, and he looked a lot more confident today from what I saw. But it's a lot of fun seeing him pitch right now. It's a lot of fun seeing CJ Abrams field right now. It's just something that we were so excited to see both of these rookies, especially last year, where everybody thought Mackenzie Gore would be ready. I think his ETA was 2021 to begin with. Everybody was so ready to see Mackenzie Gore in the year that the Padres were supposed to contend for the World Series, and it didn't pan out. It seemed like nothing panned out for the Padres last year. And, things are starting to look good right now. I know Tatis is down, but CJ Abrams looks good in limited amount of time. Mackenzie Gore is pitching really, really well. And although, he's not hitting his spots to the extent that I think a lot of people would like, definitely a lot better than last year. Like Matt said, his walks are way down. His control is looking a lot better, and he's doing it with solid velocity. So, really enlightening thing, man, especially because he went from being like a top 10 prospect in baseball to barely in the top 100, which was, he's looking like it's going to be a mistake. So good to see.
Yeah, I always find the prospect ranking so interesting just because they're like so up and down. And then they're also like always behind on guys that are super young. We're actually going to be kind of talking about the Padres top 30 for MLB.com's top 30 on Friday. So we're going to go through that. And then later in spring, we'll probably do our own top 30 list. We did that last year and it was super fun to do just because you really understand the Padres farm system after going through and doing research on guys. Because if you're making a top 30 list, you need to look into more than 30 guys. And obviously we get a lot of guys' names floated around, but there were a couple lower end guys that people didn't really know about last year. I remember doing it. And there's a couple guys that we really like that we're going to have way higher than MLB.com has it. So we'll probably do that later this spring training, just because I think that's one of the best parts about spring training is you just kind of get excited about some of these younger guys. Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams, 2 prime examples of that so far this spring. We were going to do a video on like who to watch for in spring training. I think that's become pretty clear. I don't think I don't even think it's relevant. Yeah, it's Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abrams, everyone. That's who you want to watch. That's who everyone has their eyes on. So I don't know. I'm pumped. I'm super excited for Mackenzie Gore. And I think that you're right, Chase, where I don't think he's going to necessarily start out the fifth starter. But in terms of where he's at, he feels like he's back to being that guy that we thought he was and that we still think he's capable of being. But I don't know. I think this is probably the highlight right now of the Padres offseason is seeing Mackenzie Gore look like he's bouncing back. So super pumped. All Padres fans should be absolutely hyped for this guy. Whenever he makes his MLB debut, I think we're going to see the entire fan base just, kind of electric about him because he has the stuff to be a number 1 pitcher on a good pitching staff in the MLB. So hopefully it all pans out, but definitely positive signs from Mackenzie Gore. So with that said, thank you all for listening, and we'll be back talking Padres baseball tomorrow.